Welcome to the Options Save Lives weekly live stream, where we spend an hour each week exploring life-improving topics through a lens of alcohol recovery and the Sinclair Method. Every week, we take on a new question, topic, or common challenge to empower people to either build a better relationship with alcohol or to eliminate it completely. Episodes are filmed live on Twitch at twitch.tv/C3 Foundation, and the audience is encouraged to ask questions and engage with the host and guests. The Options Save Lives weekly stream is hosted by Executive Director Jenny Williamson and is produced by the C3 Foundation with the support of R Street Institute and other generous sponsors. For more information about the C3 Foundation or the Sinclair Method, visit our website at c3foundation.org. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning into the Options Save Lives weekly live stream. As always, I'm Jenny Williamson, Executive Director of the C3 Foundation, and your host for the next hour. How is everyone today? We're broadcasting live from the C3 Foundation office here in Fort Myers, Florida, and I apologize for those technical issues that got us delayed a little bit today. We've had some connectivity issues where the office internet inexplicably went out, and then we had some Zoom issues. So apparently it's just technologically challenged day. So hopefully we've got all of that out of the way now. And this week, speaking of challenges, we're going to be talking about Sinclair Method challenges with Brian Noonan. So if you guys have any of common challenges that you've faced or that you've heard others face, go ahead and put that in the chat area. We'll be taking questions as they come up today instead of doing a dedicated Q&A. We want to just kind of keep everything flowing and interactive, and hope that you guys can participate just as much as we do. Now, we want to talk about the TSM challenges today because a lot of the challenges that people have with the Sinclair Method are really common. So when you face them, it's important to know that you're not alone, and there is a really good chance that someone, whether that's your medical provider, somebody in the peer support groups, or us at the C3 Foundation, can easily help you find a way past those challenges. So before we jump in, let me properly introduce our guest for today. Brian Noonan has been a psychiatric nurse practitioner for 15 years. He's a graduate of Vanderbilt University and received training at the Vanderbilt Institute for Treatment of Addiction. He's also a former faculty member at Seattle University, and considering he lived for 6 months in a Zen monastery, it should come as no surprise that Brian specializes in mindfulness meditation. We were first introduced to Brian back in late 2015 when someone emailed us the information for Ballard Psychiatry. Claudia reached out, and thankfully Brian responded enthusiastically about being listed as one of our earliest verified Sinclair Method providers. Since then, Brian has started sinclairmethod.org, which is a telemedicine treatment service that currently operates in about half of the 50 states, plus Washington, D.C. Brian's experience includes treating more than 3,000 TSM patients, and he has been a longtime supporter and sponsor of the C3 Foundation, holding the distinction of being our very first listed telemedicine provider. I don't even know if Brian knew that. So go ahead and say hello, Brian. Let's make sure that everybody out there can hear you.
Yes, hello, Jenny. Good to see you today. 2015 was it's hard to believe that's been 7 years ago, and at that time I think there were just maybe 5 or 6 providers, definitely one short column of TSM providers, and like you said, no telehealth providers. So a lot has changed, very impressively. A lot has changed for the good in regards to TSM availability. So yeah, it's really great to be here today and answer any questions, kind of connect with people that might be having challenges of one type or another. So.
And we have quite the international audience out there today, Brian. So you got people from as far away as Australia listening right now. So, you're on the world stage.
Yeah, it's very exciting. Yeah, and we're based in Seattle, but I'm in Atlanta. But like you mentioned, we're in over half of the states, which happens to be about 80% of the population. So at least in the U.S., we're doing pretty well in terms of coverage. Whereas back in 2014, a little bit in advance of reaching out to you guys, people were traveling to Seattle from Portland or Alaska even, or it was really, if you think of a challenge, the challenges that existed in 2014-15 were simply just that no one provided the service at all. You really had to be creative in your pursuit of it.
Absolutely. And we'll go into that in a little bit, but we usually start with an easy little icebreaker, but I'm going to switch that up a little bit today. When you sent me your bio, you mentioned a love of fajitas. So, what is so awesome about fajitas?
Well, part of it, I have to admit, beyond the taste, there's a certain element of convenience to it that you can just make a big thing of beans and rice, and it's very easy to make. And I definitely, that's something I have to keep my eye on in terms of not overdoing it, because as long as there are ingredients available, handily, easily accessible in my refrigerator, I will have a fajita, kind of either recently have eaten one or thinking about, it's a delicious food. You don't necessarily have to have a meat in it as well. So you can make a vegetarian or mix it up, any way you like. So mostly it is tasty, but it's very convenient as well. So
yeah, I think my go-to ends up being pasta, just because it's so quick and easy. And then I like to make my own sauce. I've become kind of a wizard with a white sauce. So
nice. Yeah. And it's important that you never get sick of it too. There's some foods that you might like, but it's not, you can't really kind of have a staple. It can't be a staple for you, but pasta, beans, and rice, those are my go-tos.
Awesome.
I'm not a vegetarian now, but I used to be for quite a while, and that was definitely my go-to.
The go-to food. All right, so you touched on this a little bit already, but and obviously accessibility, at least in the U.S. and Canada, has changed dramatically in the last 7. Claudia and I will have been doing this for 9 years in June. So the landscape from 9 years ago to now is completely unrecognizable when we look back. But what are some of the common challenges that you see people having before they even start the Sinclair Method?
Yeah, that's right. That, of course, that's the initial stage of the process. So if it doesn't, if there's a challenge that can't be overcome at that stage, of course, they will never, continue down the path. In general, the awareness and knowledge of the Sinclair Method prior to telehealth, but initially with the internet, has made just becoming aware of it. The likelihood of someone saying, I've never heard of this, or why haven't I heard of this, which is still very common, but that is decreasing as people have success with it. And I would say, really, if you want to put your finger on a single thing that has made lowered that barrier, it would be Claudia's YouTube video. We have seen thousands of people by now, and it is really the single thread through most people's introduction to the Sinclair Method is through that video. So just in terms of being aware that there's an alternative, that's the first step, because otherwise, through, kind of leading up to that point in their life where they decided that they wanted help, it would not have included the Sinclair Method, AA or some other type of program. And of course, the Sinclair Method would not have been a component of any medical training or nurse practitioner training or psychotherapy training or anything like that as well. So it's not something that even another professional that they were reaching out to would have brought to their attention. So if you're thinking of 2015, the biggest barrier was certainly just being aware that this was even a possibility. But I feel like that is being chipped away. If you look at Google searches for Sinclair Method, if you look at just the number of visitors to a particular YouTube video about anything related to the Sinclair Method, those types of things. So people are more, so awareness being the kind of first barrier, people are definitely more aware of it. And kind of a part of that too is people are very excited about the Sinclair Method. I've had so many patients through the years who want to write articles and want to be a part of promoting awareness of the Sinclair Method. So that's one thing that really gives me hope is that kind of the inevitability of it. The way I see it is that because it actually is very effective, that people want to talk about it, despite the stigma. People want to share their stories. So I think since 2015. That very first barrier, which is just being aware of this, has really started to crumble.
And in your opinion, what more can be done to help get that challenge out of the way?
Well, I think as the next wave, from the medical or kind of from the healthcare community, the next wave of providers will have this as a part of their training. When I was at Vanderbilt, we knew of, naltrexone was FDA approved in '94, so it wasn't that this was not mentioned, or it wasn't something that was part of a test we may have taken in terms of side effects. I mean, we knew what naltrexone was and how it was used. There was almost a dismissive attitude towards it, because as we now know from the Sinclair Method, the way that it was, its use, the way it was promoted by the FDA and others at the time, what really was not effective or ineffective. So there was the dismissiveness about naltrexone at the time turns out to be appropriately placed. It turned out, there wasn't a lot of confidence in it at the time. So, this next wave of physicians, of nurse practitioners, of psychologists, of social workers, of coaches, of all stripes, it's going to just start be something that when they're doing their own research, they're going to stumble upon it. The likelihood of having heard of the Sinclair Method is just going to increase. And once you have one provider, even a family doctor, a family doctor is certainly going to run across people who have some level of drinking that is problematic, and just one doctor might see hundreds, if not thousands, of people that they can now introduce this to. So I think it's and of course it can grow exponentially as well, just by having one person tell another person, then two people tell. And so I think it's going to reach some level where it really just takes off, and whether it be Claudia or whether it be another celebrity or athlete, or it happens to wind up on some type of media, something that goes viral, just something like that. It's not going to take much, I think, for it to really just become kind of part of the awareness of your average American or Australian or whoever.
And then one of the things that we see in our peer supports, we see a lot of times people will post something along the lines of, I got my appointment last month and I received my medication and I haven't figured out why, but I haven't started it yet. Do you see that challenge? And how do you help patients deal with that?
Yeah, well, that is a common challenge, and I'll tell you, kind of sort of kind of in a darkly amusing way. Some of the times that happens because the pharmacist will tell the patient not to drink while they take it. In other words, they will actually have another medical provider contradict the entire treatment program of the Sinclair Method while they're picking up their prescription. So that I've heard that more than once. Yeah, well, my pharmacist scared. We'll have a follow-up appointment, and like you're saying, they had not taken their medication because they wanted to discuss it with me at a follow-up because of what their pharmacist or whoever had told them, or they read it on the package insert, or they had obtained information in really otherwise kind of legitimate, it wasn't some, it was a pharmacist or package insert or some other material, otherwise legitimate, but it was incorrect in terms of the Sinclair method. So that's very common, where people just, they're told one thing by one professional, us, the people that are doing the Sinclair method, but they're told something else by the more kind of conventional or really outdated strategy. That's the first one, is just lack of trust because they're getting mixed messages.
And then once people start on the Sinclair method, just starting can bring an entirely different subset of challenges. So why don't you talk about a few of those?
Yeah. So for example, let's say that a person has the prescription, they have not been misinformed, so they're going to take the naltrexone. Now, the standard instructions would be, so the concern here would be side effects or some other unpleasant experience. So the kind of way to combat that would be, for the first 2 days, take a half a tablet, which would be 25 milligrams. And I'm very kind of repetitive and about taking it with a meal, not just food, not just, had a little, but really take it with a full meal and half a tablet for a minimum of 2 days. Now, some people have, let's say they have irritable bowel syndrome, or of course, alcohol itself is a gastric irritant, or they just know that they're sensitive, or they're just anxious. They don't know what this med's going to do. And so then I will advise take a quarter of a pill, or take an eighth of a pill if you have a small enough pill cutter, that no matter what, whatever you feel comfortable, whatever dosing increment it takes to initiate, to get over that tiny barrier, which is reasonable. It's kind of to be expected to take this substance you've never tried. So I really just try to emphasize that this is a long-term process. You're going to, taking an extra day or two or a week or two or whatever it is to make you feel comfortable. Take the smallest dose and just inch your way up with a full meal. So that's usually just the first barrier. What is this going to do? What side effects is it going to cause? Of course, a lot of people are concerned about liver problems. There used to be, and I think this was 2013 or 14, there used to be a black box warning on the naltrexone package insert. So of course that is scary. That's frightening. So a lot of people see that. So they people kind of want to talk about the possibility of liver damage. So now I consider that to be sort of really unfortunate, that something so toxic for the liver as alcohol, that the treatment for that, there would be a black box warning about liver damage. It's a really painful irony for people, because we know that at normal doses that we use, there's no evidence of liver toxicity, and even in the studies that were the basis for that original black box warning, they were all reversible, transient. There was nothing significant for that basis to scare people. But depending on what sources people are reading, it might still have that black box warning on there. So that's a big fear. What's going to happen? What is this drug going to do to me?
And if I recall, the actual toxicity level is something along the lines of 300 milligrams every single day for an extended period of time or something like that. Is that correct?
That's right. It was 300 milligrams. And beyond that, it was just a very small study. It was 26 participants. And of course, and there were some comorbidities involved as well. But what's interesting is, there are many kind of just head-scratching elements to it. But again, it was all reversible. Once these elevations, these enzyme elevations, were detected in these very high doses, which 300 milligrams would be 6 times the usual dose. Once those elevations were detected, they were completely reversible. In other words, there really essentially nothing happened as a result of taking a very, very, very high dose of naltrexone. Meanwhile, is there anything more toxic than alcohol for the liver? There may be, but not in a grocery store probably, or not even in a pharmacy. They sell alcohol now. So, so just when you're comparing the two, it's really not even close. So that is often a barrier. I would say the liver. Generally, just people have an abstract concern about side effects, but then kind of more specifically, the liver is the main one that people have heard about. But and kind of along those lines with barriers, At Sinclair Method, we don't, we really, unless there's a very, very specific active liver damage, we really start people without liver monitoring, because we know that the alcohol is really the concern here, not the naltrexone. Now, of course, once we're started, we can do subsequent follow-up, but we really try to, if the person is, if the person is there for an appointment that day, after all, the guilt and stigma and all these things, we want to get them that naltrexone as quickly as possible, and we'll do the follow-up later. So we try to lower that barrier as well. So really just getting people started while the motivation is there.
So, speaking of motivation, motivation is a key contributor to medication adherence and following the protocol. So talk a little bit about the challenge of medication adherence, especially once that initial burst of motivation has worn off.
That's right. Of course, one of the when people are often criticizing the Sinclair Method or raising questions about it, ultimately they seem to feel that a checkmate has been made by acknowledging that yes, you do have to choose to take the medication at some point. I mean, there is some element of choice. It's not a 100% passive activity. You're going to need to take that medication 100% of the time, 100.0% of the time without exceptions prior to drinking. So there is a motivation element there, especially at the beginning of treatment. I think it's really when we talk about kind of strategies or tips or kind of how to think about what's going on, you really want to think about the initiation phase. The person's starting this medication, say, to the first 2 to 4 weeks, versus what I would just call the pre-extinction stage. They're still actively drinking, still having some cravings, still, and then post-extinction. Once that craving and interest has really faded to the background, it's not really a part of their internal experience on a day-to-day basis. So at the beginning, yes, as you're saying, motivation can be high. One of the things that we kind of focus on, especially again, this initiation stage, is to really take the medication as early as possible when the motivation is there. Now, again, strictly speaking, 1 hour prior to the first drink, that's kind of the minimum amount of time that would be required for the drug to be kind of metabolized, for it to be in place to provide blockade of the endorphins. But at the beginning of the treatment, when that motivation can be fluctuating, and also the interest, the brain's pursuit of those endorphins is at its highest. In other words, you have an agent in your mind that is completely counter to this strategy. It doesn't want to not get those rewards. It wants that buzz. So you have this, this kind of other entity in your mind that does not want this. But what we find is that usually people at the beginning of the day, when they wake up, they tend to be motivated, whether it be for the Sinclair Method or going to the gym or whatever, or eating well later on. But as the day progresses, and in this case, as you get closer and closer to that first drink, the quality of the decision making about taking the naltrexone really deteriorates. Because your brain is actually starting to have this anticipatory excitement for the endorphins from the drink. So as you get closer and closer and closer to that first drink, the quality of the decision making goes down. So one thing that we kind of emphasize at the beginning is to really not walk such a tightrope with the 1 hour. Even though that is going to be the long-term strategy at the beginning with the fluctuating levels of motivation. Also, just remembering to take it, or this is a new thing, a new behavior that you're doing. So we really try to have it not wait until 1 hour before, do it a little bit earlier than that, so you have some room for error should you forget. And then also time it around a particular activity. It could be lunch. Lunch is often a good time just because there's a meal, there's plenty of food. And so you can set the alarm on your phone, or or just even the context of lunch to remind people. But the important point is that that while yes, in the long run you can do it 1 hour before, what we find is maybe a person is actually able to accomplish that 90% of the time. the first month, we'll say, which is in other kind of context, that'd be great. That'd be an A in most, if it were some kind of academic study, but 90% of the time might just not work at all with the Sinclair method. That any kind of examples or episodes of reinforcement can really undermine the whole thing. That 90% might get you 0% of the results. So we really just focus on establishing this new habit with food, and then before your motivation deteriorates, because as you get closer to that first drink early on, it's like the lights are quite bright, and can be quite attractive.
And let's see if you have any experience on this one. Especially early on, one of the things we see a lot that challenges people are unrealistic expectations. We see a lot of people who will say things like, I've been on the Sinclair method for 2 weeks and I've dropped from drinking 20 drinks a night down to drinking 12, and I'm still drinking 12 a night, and is this not working? So talk a little bit about how setting realistic goals and truly understanding that there is a process involved can help get over the challenge created by those unrealistic expectations.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Post kind of, if you have a first appointment, you'll get a packet. And the very first thing on there, number one, is reasonable expectations. So we spend so much time talking about it, because if your expectations are not accurate, you will stop taking the naltrexone, because if you expect it to completely resolve the issue in 2 weeks, if that is your metric for success or determining if it's working, then yes, you would stop it, because you're still drinking 12, in this example, you're still drinking 12 drinks a night. The Sinclair method doesn't work. So then you would stop it. So which would be unfortunate in this case, because we know that, actually going from 20 to 12, it's a
40% drop.
Yeah, that's above average. That's an amazing, that's top tier. We would not even, want to give a person the idea that was possible or expected. So yeah, so setting realistic expectations. So what is reasonable to expect out of the gate? Now, again, what I'm going to say here is just an average. This is some people really do have kind of a switch that gets flipped. We see them, their first follow-up, and they just feel like some dramatic change has been going, has happened, and the just dramatically reduced interest. But that is not typical. My attitude is kind of, if that happens, that's great. That is within the range of responses, but it is not to be expected, and it's not something that you should use as a criterion for success here. So what is typical, again, for most people? What I would say is, one is to not, and I'm not talking like for the first month, really, we'll say. So for the first month, we'll say, I encourage people not to expect a reduction in the frequency of drinking. So in other words, let's say that someone's drinking daily. So the first month, 30 days, if they begin the Sinclair method, and then 30 days later, if they're drinking daily, probably they're going to have 30 out of 30 days drinking. So now, again, that's not always true, but it's true a lot of the times. It's probably true most of the time that the frequency of the drinking is not going to go down. So again, I encourage people, if you're drinking daily, be kind of prepared that you're probably going to be drinking every day for the next month. So don't be concerned by that at all. So what you are likely to notice is, again, as this gentleman, you're likely to notice a reduction in the overall average number of drinks per day, per session, per week, whatever it is. So in other words, you probably will still be drinking every day, but you're going to be drinking less. But again, still a lot. I mean, 12 drinks a day is a lot. There's by any measure, that's a lot, but it's a lot better than 20. So that's kind of the idea that you want to convey, is that you're still going to be drinking every day, or just about every day. You're going to be drinking a lot by any standards. But what we anticipate at least in a numerical sense, is that there's going to be some percentage of reduction. I usually say 15, 20, 25%, something like that. That would be an average kind of reduction that we see. So, if they were starting at 20, I would say maybe they could get down to 15, but it could be 16 or 17. But something that, if you're keeping a good records, your logging would be sensitive enough to detect. The other thing I expect, or another kind of thing that I tell people to anticipate, is quite a bit of variance at the beginning. So one day you might take the naltrexone and think, the Sinclair method is amazing. I didn't even finish my first drink. This is a miracle. And the next day you might binge. You might have opened that bottle of wine anticipating to have one drink, and then you finish it off as usual. And you're wondering, is this working? So that's another thing that we see as fluctuations. But that's one of the benefits of keeping a drinking log, is that you can always keep the big picture in mind versus kind of what happened the day before. You can see, yes, I still kind of definitely finished that bottle of wine off. I'm still definitely doing that. But on the other hand, I'm down 26.4%. And so that's why the drinking log really is critical, because it is such a long, gradual process with variance. So you can really see what's happening. So the drinking log, I think sometimes people might underestimate it. It really is more than just kind of collecting data. I mean, it really has some psychological advantages too, just reinforcing this idea that you're making progress.
And while we're talking about the variability, the other thing that you mentioned was the shame. And so variability can cause people to instinctively go back to the self-judgment and shame, which of course we know is, yes, judgment and shame is a trigger to drink because it's stressful. So it's counterproductive. So talk a little bit about how people who are experiencing the variability can better deal with that self-judgment and poor self-talk and shame that comes from having that experience.
That's right. And I'll say one other kind of little nuance to what we see is that that happens very quickly. In other words, if I had to say what kind of effect could we kind of most reliably see the earliest, it would be kind of blackout drinking, the large binge type drinking. Now you still might have a bottle of wine, but not two or three. So these very extreme events of drinking, those seem to quickly go away. So the types of drinking that might damage relationships, or if you're blackout, who knows what might happen. So the very extreme events seem to be clipped off very soon. So that's something that people can kind of hang their hat on, that these very dangerous and destructive episodes can be stopped pretty quickly. Yeah, you're right. One of the things too that I emphasize is that along with 100% compliance, and just a couple basic things, is to really kind of let go of some of these kind of internal habits that people have had. A lot of times people want, most of the people that we work with, they're very, most people we work with are very driven, and they just, they want to be the best Sinclair Method patient they could be. What can I do? It's always easy, so I really try to rein in people's kind of behavioral changes to really, there's a proverb that says, if you try to chase 3 rabbits, you won't catch either, or something like that. So this idea of just really narrowing your focus, and of course, by far, the number one thing is not missing a dose. So I really focus on that. But one of the things I say, well, if you want to start doing something in addition to just being perfect with compliance and keeping a drinking log, is to let go of the self-criticism, let go of the internal dialogue that you have related to this. For one, as you said, counterproductive. For one, it doesn't work. I mean, if calling ourselves names worked, maybe we could get it authorized as a treatment. But it's beyond just simply doesn't work. I mean, just to be practical about it, calling yourself a name, if that worked, you wouldn't need any treatment, because anyone that's had, whether it be drinking or any substance or any, there's always self-criticism that accompanies it. So just on a practical level, it's not effective. So that's one thing that we, and again, in terms of, mindfulness, this is kind of where mindfulness comes in. It's just to practice taking note of it. Of course, the self-criticism will still arise. This has been a habitual mental pattern for a very long time. So it's not you can't really kind of say, well, I'm not going to have negative thoughts about myself over the next 30 days. And that's not going to work. But the point is to become aware of those and just not to kind of become preoccupied by them, to not believe it, to not take it as some sort of a truth, just to be aware that there's some part of your brain that's being critical, and that's something you want to move away from. Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say too, along with that, the other mental habit too, one thing that I kind of discourage people to do as well is to stop, and this is not to say just be reckless with your drinking, but to stop making all kinds of rules around, I'm only going to do this, I'm only going to do that. Again, if that was effective, you wouldn't need to, that's not effective treatment either. Or, you only can sustain that for a certain amount of time. I'm only going to drink on the weekends if I don't have the kids, or if I, it's like people have all kinds of internal systems like that. But those tend to mostly be as ineffective as the self-criticism. So basically, I just try to make people just really, kind of embrace themselves. Cut themselves some slack. This you're doing great. This is, you're here. There's no reason to just keep kind of beating yourself up like that. That's so, and kind of saying that that's part of what the end game, like for the Sinclair Method, looks like as well. That you're not beating yourself up, and then also you're not making all kinds of rules for yourself. I mean, that the behavior itself is not something you're preoccupied with controlling.
So once people have been on the Sinclair Method for a while, unfortunately, that doesn't mean that the challenges stop. They just continue in a different direction. So let's start with one that's kind of adjacent to what we were just talking about. And instead of self-talk, talk about the challenge of comparing your progress to other people.
That's right, and that's actually very common, of course, with social media and peer groups and things like that. It's also common within families. I mean, because the Sinclair Method is effective, you'll have spouses or family members or friends encourage their friend or family member or whatever to try the Sinclair Method, and of course the results results may vary, as I say, and so that one person might have a different type of a change or a different rate of change, or one person might have a stomach ache and the other person has no side effects whatsoever, and the other person has a change in appetite or what have you. So there's all kinds of different experiences. And so I really encourage people, especially because most of the time people are making progress. If we say, okay, well, here's month 1, here's month 3, here's month 6, your progress is amazing. I think about, back to when you first started. Yes, but so-and-so has already reached extinction, and it's like there's some kind of competition to reach extinction. But that's just the nature of our chemistries. Why one person, of course, we know that the genetics are involved with the creation of the problem, but genetics are also involved with the kind of the solution to this problem. The way you metabolize naltrexone, there are all kinds of variables that are involved. So 2 people can be, never miss a dose, totally compliant. I've read The Cure for Alcoholism. I've seen the TED Talk. I'm doing all these things, and so is my friend, and yet, she's down by 75%, and I'm only down by 30%, or something like that. So it's common. So I just encourage people to know that is normal. That because your friend may or loved one might be having a little bit faster progress, good for them. That's great. But that doesn't mean that you aren't doing well, or that you aren't going to reach your goal. One thing that we find is that any type of improvement is just very highly associated with ultimate extinction. In other words, people that show progress, it's overwhelmingly likely that they're going to reach extinction. So if a person has had any kind of benefit, if they're still drinking daily, still having a bottle and a half of wine every day, but it's less than when they started, they're very, very likely to reach extinction, albeit it might be slow. So it's a slow, gradual process. So I always use a comparison of just exercise, or if you're totally out of shape, it's going to take a while to get to finish that marathon or whatever it might be. But if you look after a month, your ability to run a little bit faster has increased, and so that kind of thing. So it's just not comparing yourself to others, and just kind of be happy that they're being helped, but also that it's very likely that you're going to reach your extinction point as well.
And then here's another one that we see a bit, and I call it the "I'm cured so I can drink without the medication" myth.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk
Yes.
about that challenge a little bit and how common that challenge can be.
Yeah. So I will say, so that definitely happens. I will say the good, and I'll kind of address it specifically, but I will say the good news is that when people kind of realize the error of their ways and they restart, I can't think of a single instance in which they didn't kind of replicate their initial success, or kind of, so it's like, if that is you and you have, or someone has stopped the naltrexone and found themselves in a position, please go back to your provider, please, reinitiate the program, because you haven't kind of created a permanent, you haven't permanently damaged your ability to succeed with the Sinclair method. But so the Sinclair method, so that's a very common question, something like, am I going to have to take this the rest of my life? And the answer is yes, you're going to have to take naltrexone the rest of your life prior to drinking. And of course, at the beginning of this process, that might be they're taking it every day, in which case you'll take naltrexone every day. Now, depending on what someone's goals might be, they may reach, when they reach extinction, they may never ever drink again, in which case you'd never have to need the naltrexone again. Or they might be social drinkers. We have people who work in the wine industry in Washington and Oregon, and they drink all the time, basically just every day. So they take their naltrexone all the time, and there's fine. There's no problem with it. The comparison I like to use is just that naltrexone is kind of like a seatbelt in your car. You say, well, am I going to have to wear a seatbelt the rest of my life? Well, before you drive, or you're in a car, that's going to be a really good idea for you to wear your seatbelt. Now, if you live in the city and don't drive a car for 4 months, you won't be wearing a seatbelt. But if the next time you're in your car, no matter how long it's been, you need to wear your seatbelt. And then again, and on top of that, I always kind of compare it to the dangers of alcohol. That the alcohol is always the most toxic part of the equation.
And then building off your seatbelt analogy would be it would be the challenge of complacency, especially after extinction, when someone says, well, I've been wearing my seatbelt and I haven't died in a car crash, so therefore I'm just, maybe I don't actually need to wear it this time. Complacency leading to non-compliance.
That's right. And it's complacency. And also there's a certain truth to it that if you go drive your seatbelt, or if you go out and drive without a seatbelt on that given day, you're unlikely to die in a car accident. The probability of that is very low. So in some sense, in a very, kind of short-sighted sense, I mean, it is accurate to say that you can wear your seatbelt on a given day and not be injured in an accident. So it is common that people have that attitude, and they now sometimes the basis is it's kind of a common kind of illogical thinking about medicine in general. A lot of times, whether it be antidepressants or we'll just say antidepressants, a lot of times people they're doing well, so they say, okay, well I'm not depressed anymore. Why do I need to take an antidepressant? And then they find, well, the reason that you weren't depressed is because you had been taking the antidepressant. So they go off of it and they find their symptoms reoccur. So that's kind of what happens a lot of times with the Sinclair method. People are doing great. They completely controlled. There's no obsessive fixation. Alcohol is not really a part of their life beyond just when they choose to drink, and they take the naltrexone. So they say, okay, well, this problem is solved. I don't need the naltrexone. Now, in all likelihood, just like the seatbelt, on any given episode of drinking, maybe that very first drinking session without it, maybe nothing will go wrong. Maybe they won't overdo it. Maybe they won't black out. Maybe they won't have, and even the second time, it could be. But on the other hand, first of all, there is a chance that something would happen that because you've not had this type of reward and pleasure for some period of time, it's going to be an unusually reinforcing experience. But then again, but whether or not that is the case, ultimately you're rolling the dice. Because it might not be that first time, and really kind of the fact that nothing bad happened that first time is really mixed. It's kind of it's a really a mixed blessing, because it might give you the idea that you're good, that you're fine, that you can continue this pattern. But ultimately, most people, they might do that for a couple months, but most people end up, I stopped my meds, but I want to get restarted as quickly as possible. So that's overwhelming majority.
And one other big question, because we have a lot of people who watch these videos who are not on the Sinclair Method themselves, but they are supporting a loved one who is on the Sinclair Method. So regardless of stage that their loved one is at in the TSM process, how can support systems help their loved ones succeed on TSM through some of these challenges?
Well, I think your support groups, especially your immediate support group, I think just knowing that what the Sinclair Method is probably, that's going to, because there will be some naturally kind of following behaviors and attitude that follow from simply just knowing what it is. Because if your kind of understanding of what alcohol treatment is that the person won't be drinking or won't overdrink at some point at the beginning, then you're going to provide a lot of negative feedback for the person that this naltrexone doesn't work. The Sinclair Method doesn't work. Of course, I haven't heard of this. Why? All those kinds of things. So if the person in the support group is not aware of what's going on, it really would be strange. This person is an alcohol treatment. They had a bottle of wine last night. This can't possibly be working. So I just say education. I always encourage people. During the first visit, I like to just kind of have the person, just kind of be an individual visit. But I really do encourage spouses or friends, whoever they want, whoever they think, they want to be involved. Come to the follow-up appointment. Let's hear kind of from the horse's mouth, like this, what the person's telling you really is true. They can drink. That this is what we're doing. So I think just being informed, and then will naturally lead to compassion and understanding of what's going. I think a lot of times too, and this kind of ties into what we were talking about earlier with the self-criticism. Just understanding that it really is a neurologically based behavior. Really has nothing to do with kind of the person as such. In the way that we think of John or Mary or whoever they are. It really is that they have an unusually sensitive endorphin system or opioid system in response to endorphins, and these pathways have been strengthened. But this is what happens. It's not it's a recipe that given a genetic predisposition and that this is essentially an inevitable kind of consequence of these various ingredients. So I think understanding how this problem came to be increases self-compassion. Just to know that, hey, this is not about my moral character and so forth, and then other people around you not making judgments along those same lines. And then practically speaking, now I think this can be annoying for some people, but I do encourage first month, if someone else have you taken your medicine? Don't just you definitely these types of external feedbacks. Of course you can now set up Alexa or some sort of automated voice system to set an alarm to remind you. But any of those external types of things, whether it be a person or the technology that we have at the beginning, anything to increase the chances of you hitting that 100% is going to be helpful.
And in your opinion, what are some ways that someone can be proactive with the information we've talked about, knowing about these challenges, so that they can minimize their own TSM challenges?
Yeah, well, it depends. I guess the most broad kind of answer is to just realize that everyone is different. What works for person A does not necessarily work for person B. So you really want to keep an open mind about finding the strategy that works best for you. So to not be discouraged. of course, I've seen thousands of people. Some people, 1 hour before that, 1 hour before the first drink, that is the sweet spot. That works the best, puts a total clamp on the thing. They have no trouble remembering to take it. I mean, that works. On the other hand, some percentage of people, they need a little bit of a buffer, 2 to 3 hours before, and that seems to work best. And the way they metabolize it allows for early dosing, so you're still getting adequate blockade. So I would say, in terms of the challenges, you want to keep an attitude that to find what works for you as a person. Yes, what you read, what you hear me say, even, or what you read online, or these are all ideas. These are all the things that other people have had success with in terms of strategies. But everyone is different. Some people, some people like to exercise in the morning, and some people like to exercise in the evening. And we have, studies that show different trade-offs for that. So it's all about, what is going to work for you the best, the rates at which people metabolize things. Some people, of course, I just encourage, just a huge meal at the beginning, but some people are ultimately able to take it on an empty stomach. So great for them. They don't need this kind of additional factor. So it's really about just keeping an open mind and trying new things and working with someone who knows what the different options are, but also kind of knowing what the nuances to those things. I mean, sometimes if you only have a piece of the information, but you don't know the full context, you might kind of misunderstand, is this pre-extinction or post-extinction that the person is making this recommendation for, those types of things.
And it is hard to believe, but it does look like we are almost out of time. Audience, you guys have been wonderful. Some of the things we've seen in our audience, there's some chatter back and forth, which was great. And it seems as though over time, people are saying that the liver scans are becoming less and less used as a condition to prescribe the medication, which that's always good to hear, that is changing, and so that's great. Yeah. And then
I'll just quickly add, if you think about how many barriers exist to obtaining alcohol in the first place, you just have to be 21, and of course, in many states, depending on what grocery store, they don't even check your ID. So think about what do you have to do to get naltrexone? There used to be a liver test and speak to a professional who had X number of years of training and go to all these things, where the alcohol that created the problem in the first place, you just walk into a store and grab it. So yeah, it's great that the barriers to the solution are being lowered.
Yeah, and we had a comment from someone who just took her first pill last night. And whoever her provider was put her right direct to the 50 milligrams. So she found that she couldn't sleep, and then woke up this morning kind of feeling depressed with no appetite. So feels good about it, the thought of taking half with a meal.
Yeah.
Going
yeah,
forward.
And I would say even a quarter. I mean, there's really no rush here with a full meal, but also maybe tomorrow's Saturday. Maybe wait until tomorrow. Always think about, and this is true with naltrexone or any drug. Really, don't jump on a plane and take a med for the first time. Something like that. Put in a situation where if it makes you a little dizzy or sleepy or whatever, you're gonna be fine. If you don't have work obligations. So if this person is not doing anything tomorrow, Saturday would be a great time to take it, and take it a little bit earlier. I mean, it can cause drowsiness, but it also can cause this kind of activation that people kind of like a jitteriness that people kind of equate to caffeine. So I would say, start at a very low dose, even a quarter of a tablet full meal. And then and then kind of assess your response.
All right, everybody, please thank me in joining our wonderful guest, Brian Noonan. So please fill the chat area with those thank yous. I already see one in here from one of our audience members. So those are filling in. Guys, if you came in late, or if you want to share or watch the stream again, we are going to have today's video up on our website, YouTube, Vimeo, Anchor, and Spotify, all hopefully by the end of today. And then as soon as we're able to, we will get those transcripts and closed captioning added as well. We're behind, but that's pretty much all on me. So I'll take responsibility for that one. Next week, we're going to be joined by Katie Lane from Thrive Alcohol Recovery, and we're going to talk about something we have to explain to nearly everyone who starts the Sinclair Method: having patience with the process. So start thinking about those questions now. And for our international audience, make note. This weekend here in the U.S., we are going to be springing forward to daylight savings time. So please make sure your time zone conversion skills are sharp so that you don't miss us next week. If you've found value in this broadcast, we hope you'll hit the donate button in our profile or head to our website to make a donation at c3foundation.org/donate. You can follow our channel to get broadcast alerts and subscribe to our channel to go ad-free and get some bonus emoji to use. If you're an Amazon Prime member, you can subscribe for free, and you can do all those other Twitch stuff that you can usually do, cheer, drop bits, host our channel, all of it. And question in the chat, same place, same time, same place next week with Katie? No. If the time zone is changing. Otherwise, it's gonna be noon Eastern Daylight Time instead of Eastern Standard Time. So we are moving up an hour, but the time on the clock during the broadcast will still be the same. If you'd like to suggest a guest or a topic for a future broadcast, we have been dropping a link in our chat. We only have a couple more open slots for the rest of the season, but we will be doing a third season starting in the fall. So if we can't get your suggestion in by the end of this season, hold on, we'll get there next season. So if you're on the Sinclair Method, you're looking for more peer support, or you just want to join the C3 Foundation community, we have you covered with groups on Facebook, Discord, and our Options Save Lives forum. And that's it for today, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend wherever you are in the world. Be gentle with yourself and with others, and we'll see you here next week. Bye, everybody. You've been watching the Options Save Lives weekly live stream, hosted by Executive Director Jenny Williamson and produced by the C3 Foundation with the support of R Street Institute and other generous supporters. For more information about the C3 Foundation or the Sinclair Method, visit our website at c3foundation.org. If you have a question you want answered live on air, to make guest suggestions, or to support the show, let us know. You can reach us through our website, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or on Discord. Join us each week as we continue to discuss more ways to help you build a better relationship with alcohol, or to eliminate it completely. Because recovery from alcohol use disorder is not a one-size-fits-all process. Options are available, and options save lives.